my name is Ilaria Conti. I'm originally from Rome, Italy, and I'm working right now as assistant curator of the 6th edition of the Marrakesh Biennale. I started working in this field at the beginning, conducting research for a commercial gallery while being a master's student in Italy, and I focused on contemporary art and curatorial studies really from the very beginning. I was very interested in how powerful contemporary art can be in interacting with people and with society at large. And very early on, already during my master's, I started focusing on art that challenged territorial frameworks and conceptions, and I was very fascinated by these ideas about, for instance, Indian art, Brazilian art, Russian art, all this new contemporary art, and I really felt that it was somehow a construction, and in a way it was misleading of the nature of how cultural environments developed in other countries that were not Italy, France, the UK and so on. So that became over the time really something that was not only fascinating for me but also urgent. I felt that within the big spectrum of contemporary art and within the spectrum of curatorial work that one can do, that was the element that was urgent for me to address, to hear about, to see, to learn, and to discuss with others. And so that was the very starting point somehow of my path. We live in a particular moment of history where we really struggle with that idea of movement, of transition of people from one place to another, from one social context to the other, and I think that here what was interesting and challenging was this idea of trying to escape, trying to challenge definitions constantly. What does it mean to present art that is from Africa? What does it was interesting to work with and around people's expectations of what a biennale in Marrakesh could mean. Tackling artists from Africa, from the Arab world, from West Asia, that again live here, live in Europe, live in the United States, travel across countries, and I think that of the many works that we presented, one element that really always stays with me is a little extract from one of the videos that we presented, which is a film by Mantia Diawara, in which he presents footage of Wole Soyinka talking about the process of métissage, of migration, of these people mingling, saying that what is interesting is that it's an irreversible process, and I really feel that that is an illuminating, statement for what we've been trying to do, to really celebrate this coming together and this mingling and this interconnectedness that we cannot untie it, we cannot stretch it, we cannot open it anymore. We really need to go with its depth and try to understand what it means for us. How do we negotiate that space, and ultimately how we decolonize our minds, because certain definitions, certain frameworks, we are wired with that, each one of us coming from a different place. So how do we come together in a shared place where we can sort of liberate our minds, liberate ourselves a little bit from that? And the question regarding historical artists and figures in Morocco is actually very interesting in connection to this issue of mobility, because the question is, if you exhibit African artists in Africa that are rarely exhibited here and are mostly exhibited somewhere else, how you're working around this issue of mobility? Because mobility, we need to be aware that yes, if we as foreigners we come in, but there's a lot from here that goes upwards and doesn't come back. And so I think that it is a big issue, but we also need to reverse the question, because the issue is also when you look at the other side of the coin. And so in that same sense, if artists like the Casablanca school artists are starting to be known abroad, it is important to present them also here. And we don't need to have superheroes of the history of art. That is not the intention. That is not the intent. But I think that it is important to start having a narration, not necessarily to present one narrative. Of course, every exhibition has a narrative. We tried to be comprehensive, but of course we present our own narrative of things. And I think but it is important regardless to have a narration that is for the tourist that comes, that is for really a mosaic of publics, different audiences that we can possibly have. So I think that that is what I see as the most important thing, and to leave this with the people who come, who see, who can welcome, who can push back what is it that they're seeing. But it starts presenting the entire spectrum, or at least new pieces of the mosaic, new pieces of the spectrum. For this specific edition of the Biennale, we always stress a few things that we think are very important, because practical elements really can make a difference. And the fact that the Biennale is completely free, the fact that the Biennale is across historical venues, is a way of triggering that encounter with a variety of audiences, with a variety of publics. We didn't want to have a catalog that is for sale. We didn't want to put knowledge for sale. And so we tested this alternative solution of individual booklets for each artist that are free for people to take. And the inside content of the booklet was a space of freedom for the artists to present whatever they wanted to say about their practice and their work, while the rest of it was developed by us in a completely trilingual way. And that is another element that we felt was very, very important, that of access. Access was really key to the thinking of how to structure the Biennale, where to present it, how to present it. And ultimately, another important endeavor for us was that of our education department. The fact that to this date, they have engaged 1,600 kids across the city, which is a huge amount for a little over a month of exhibition. And the hope is that by the end of the Biennale, they will have reached 3,000. So the idea is really to create a network across the city. Creating networks, creating links is what is most difficult, because you need to have resources, you need to have a vision, you need to have staff. So the hope is that over time, that is the direction for the growth of the Biennale, not just to be an important Biennale in the list of international biennales, to present, of course, important and engaging art, but also to do the work every day on the territory. That is what really makes a work great on all possible different scales. The Biennale, in a way, it's an interesting experiment, because you have a very diverse staff. So you don't have necessarily only the curatorial team that comes from outside, but there is a conversation with a broader staff that is based here in Marrakesh at all times. And so this is one way of building relationships. I think that you need to have on-site staff. The linguistic element is of course of paramount importance. All the educational programs, for instance, are done in Arabic. And as we said, all the signages and what we could present to the public, most of it is done in a trilingual way. We need to think that, of course, there are challenges that come attached to that. First, financial challenges, because you need to make sure that what you present is always accurately written, translated, presented in a way that really it doesn't, if it has to be balanced and equal, it has to be of all the same quality. So there is a lot of production work that goes into that, and so you need to have the staff resources, the financial resources. You need to have a whole structure that goes around with that, and of course the idea of interacting with a place and with different people, it is very time consuming, and it forces to have sort of a stretch when it comes to the kind of conversation that you might want to have, which is not necessarily the conversation that other people might feel the need of. So that is a fascinating and a quite essential point of bringing together an exhibition when you work for instance, with historical venues across different countries, it is not all the same thing. The system of how certain historical heritage is being managed, preserved, how you can interact with it, where are the boundaries, how do you set the border between these two, or how the border is being set for you. These are all important things that stem from a will, though, to have, again, a dialogue with the city and with its people. For me, being here, having lived here for the Biennale for some time and everything, I find that ultimately the human element is really the key to the door, because everybody is quite interested in understanding what is going on, and when you involve people, you make them feel that they're a part of it, not because you need to be generous, but because they are part of it, and they have a voice, and they have the right to have a voice in the and to be part of the conversation at all different levels, from the volunteers. For me personally, the encounter with the volunteers has been wonderful, because you see these very young people, very interested, very smart, very knowledgeable, very thirsty. They want to know what is it that you know and they don't know, and where the exchange can take place. And you need to be open. If you want to be relevant, you need to give access. And if you let others in, then the ship goes in a different direction from the one that you have planned. So I think that has been the challenge, but incredibly generative, incredibly rich, and I hope that the developments of the Biennale really honor that, because it has created a lot of content, a lot of ideas, a lot of enthusiasm, which I think it's another instinctive but quite important part. But again, let control go, I think.